The study session of the Aurora City Council from Monday, November 1st, 2021 is called to order. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mayor Kaufman?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bergen?
Here.
Councilmember Berzins?
Here.
Councilmember Coombs?
Present.
Councilmember Gardner?
Here.
Councilmember Gruber?
Here.
Councilmember Hiltz?
Here.
Councilmember Lawson?
I'm here, but I'm going to get off and log back, and I'm not sure what's going on with my video.
Okay. Councilmember Mercado?
Present.
And Councilmember Murillo?
Present.
There's a quorum.
Announcement for the call-in line.
Thank you for joining tonight's Aurora City Council study session. If you are listening on the phone, please note public comments are not taken during study sessions. The phone line is in listen-only mode. The City Council welcomes comments from residents at regular council meetings on both matters appearing on the agenda and during public invited to be heard. Sign-up opens on those evenings at 6 p.m.
There's no mayor's update, no issue update. Is there any objection to moving item 4B, executive recruitment kickoff, to the front of the agenda? Seeing none, item 4B will be moved to the front of the agenda. Is there any objection to moving item 5A, ARPA funding, behind item number 4B? Seeing none, item number 5A will then be behind item number 4B. Item number 4B, executive recruitment kickoff, court administrator.
And Mayor, this will be Scott Riley with Affion talking with you about the court administrator position. Scott, can you unmute yourself and?
All right, I think I'm there. Can you hear me, Mayor? Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Is Jeff on? Did he want to say something? I think he sent me a note.
Yes, I'm on. Hi, good evening, actually. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Jeff DeMoss. I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager with the city's Human Resources Department. I want to thank you guys for giving us time to address the executive recruitment for the appointed position of court administrator this evening. Since Administrator Dr. Du Bois' retirement, the Talent Acquisition team began proceedings to begin the recruitment for her replacement. And as with many of our departmental and office leadership roles, we are partnering with an executive recruitment firm. So I'm joined this evening by Scott Riley of Affion Public. The purpose of this agenda item is for Mr. Riley to be able to query all of you on what traits and skills you'd like to see in the next court administrator, as well as share pertinent details you feel are critical to the recruitment. So to allow for maximum time so that Mr. Riley can obtain those details, I will now turn the time over to him. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Again, I am Scott Riley, Affion Public, and we're excited to work with you on this opportunity. I see some familiar faces on the screen here, so that's good to see some of you. It's been a little while, so thanks for having me back. To you new folks, I worked with the city to bring Mr. Twombly there, so I'm familiar with some of the council members and glad things are going well. So, Mayor, if you're okay, I'm just going to jump right in and kind of start with some questions. And I don't know if my screen, I don't get to see everybody too well, so I'm not sure how I'll see hands, but I can see you, Mayor, so I'll rely on you to kind of guide that if you don't mind. But yeah, the purpose for tonight is really, you know, we've met with the HR department, we've met with Jim, we have a job description. We understand the roles and the responsibilities of the job. Now, this is really about building what we consider the candidate profile. So what's the background, the skill set, the knowledge that you want to see this individual have? what kind of, you've got some unique things in this, and that, that you're also responsible for the detention center. So just trying to get an understanding of, what do you think is really important when we go out and start vetting through candidates that we're looking for some of that. So that's really the purpose of this evening. I think it's probably just most effective if, Mayor, I'll use you as the lead to kind of give me your input, and then you can pass it down the dais as you have them on your screen to kind of give me that input. I'm just going to take notes, ask some follow-up questions if that's okay with everybody.
Sure, it's a fairly unique position in the sense that our court administrator will also be responsible for detention, and in being the court administrator, it's not simply the administration of the court, but it's really a technical understanding of how the court works in terms of the technology that we're using, and so obviously strong leadership. Let me go to the other members. Would any other members care to comment?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. So this might be an awkward time to propose this, but I think that due to the unique nature of this position, and actually a statement that Dr. Du Bois made, if I'm remembering correctly, that this role is exceptionally unique because it's typically things that are divvied out to multiple employees or multiple positions that are just kind of consolidated into one. And our city code is what determines those responsibilities. So I'm wondering if we might take this opportunity to also consider a change to our city code to break this position up into an administrator and potentially bring in a marshal to kind of handle the detention aspect, and then toss the issues for public safety closures, weather, et cetera, like that, over to the chief judge. I'd like some thoughts on that, and also the recruiters' thoughts as well, and to see if there's comparable positions like this throughout the rest of the nation that you might have dealt with.
Would the recruiter like to respond?
Sure. I mean, I think that I can't say for sure that there's comparable positions across the country like this. A lot of times some of these responsibilities are handled in different states by counties. So like we're currently doing a prison warden in a county in Pennsylvania that is privatizing and taking it back under the county. So we have some experience with that, but I would be, it'd be premature yet for me to tell you, hey, I of these 5 or 6 places that,
Sure.
That being said, I do kind of look at this as just like it's like an assistant city manager. They have several departments that report to them.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of what we're looking at is what's the skill set to manage those things. And so, while I'm not here to make about whether you need to change code, that's certainly a your call. Do I think that the unique nature of this report and the detention center, that's gonna cut both ways in our candidate pool. There's gonna be some people that are gonna say, "Oh, this is an opportunity for me to expand my experience." Some others might say, "I don't want to have anything to do with the detention center, so therefore I'm not interested." But you never know that. So that's a.
Okay, and I think developing subordinate leadership in every section to include detention, I think would be appropriate. But I think that this total span of control in terms of leadership is appropriate over those functions. But others may disagree. Further discussion.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Is Judge Day on the call? Just wondering if I could ask him a question. Why not? I was going to ask Judge Day, his opinion, because he works obviously so closely with Zelda Du Bois over many, many years, and was wondering, how he saw that potential change in how we have the position. I think the challenge will be in looking at the applicant pool So, if we have someone that has that leadership ability and the breadth of knowledge to fill the role the way it is currently written, I think they should be considered, and then that should be a possibility. I guess if we don't have a good applicant pool, then maybe the two positions make sense. But I would like Judge Day to, if not today, but another time, just opine on that for us.
Okay.
Mayor Persons?
Councilmember Persons.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few comments. And Scott, it's good to see you again. Our paths cross again.
Yes, ma'am. Good to see you.
There you go. Yeah, you're still at it. So am I. Yeah, it's good to see you. I guess I was thinking just about on the same lines as Councilmember Bergen. Let's see what we can find. And if we can't find anybody in a reasonable amount of time to change it. But Zelda did it and did a good job. She was a very strong personality, and I think who we're looking for has to be that strong personality to be able to juggle both things and do a good job at it. So that's what I'm thinking. If she did it, hopefully we can find someone else who can do it. That is a strong personality. And then we can always change if nothing comes up.
It could be part of the APD's organization, although she was made it very clear to me that she was not supportive of that. Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I think just kind of a couple things. I do agree with Councilmember Marcano, and I want to elaborate a little bit on some of the things we might be looking at here. I think, first of all, if we go ahead and spend the money on recruitment and on a search and we find we have no one, it seems like then we haven't really used that money well. And so we're going to have to spend that money again for further recruitment. And so that's a concern about the well, wait and see type of approach. The other concern that I see with that is that, Dr. Du Bois grew with the city and the role. When she started in that role, the city was much, much smaller, and the role entailed a lot less. And she was able to kind of set up her own set of procedures to keep things separated. I'm concerned that there could be a potential conflict of interest if we're bringing in someone that we're trying to have do both of these roles, both the courts and the jail. So that's a concern I have as well with the wait and see approach. And then the other thing, to Mayor, to your point about developing subordinate leadership, is it seems to me then we would have kind of this overarching administrator, and then they would need someone under them still doing the work of the courts and the jail. So then instead of creating two positions, we're creating three. So those are all the reasons I see to maybe take a pause and look at simply splitting this up into two more traditional positions of court administrator and marshal, jail warden, however we might frame that position. So that would be my preference.
Further discussion.
Mayor, Councilmember Hills.
Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm open to having those conversations, and I think what I'm about to say will probably apply to some other things that are on the agenda tonight, but this sounds like a really good discussion for a policy committee meeting. I don't know, how sustainable our current situation is the interim, but these are really big changes in functions to some of these larger departments. And so I do think it's worth having those conversations, but it might be something that needs to go through a policy committee in January after the holidays. I'm just thinking feasibly getting it on an agenda in 2 weeks is Thanksgiving, so probably not that feasible, but to have that and workshop through it, because I think, if that's something that the future council decides they want to do and change that, then we certainly don't want to spend money on a search that's going to be for someone who applies for a job that isn't what we end up offering. So I think if we can do that just in the short term and have that conversation, that would be really helpful. But This might not be the only thing on the agenda that didn't go through policy committee where I may say that it warrants further discussion. So that would be my recommendation.
Defer to the HR director for a second.
Yes, this is Brian Lance, HR director.
So Brian, can you tell us about the timeline? Because these are, I mean, I think we have some major policy issues to really decide in terms of, you know, whether this span of control is going to be in one person, or there's going to be the court administrator and then a separate administrator for detention. And does detention go with the court administrator? Does detention go with the police department? And so how much time do we have to credibly make this decision before our inaction would become disruptive?
Well, it would be up to the council to really determine the actual timeline of it. The scope of the recruitment is, understanding this position was for the court administrator as well as the detention responsibility. And our timing would be to really discuss with you guys if there was any altercation to it. At this point, the hope would be to collect the information and then begin the recruitment with the posting and some, attraction components of that piece of it. So we're really subject to what time you guys want.
Okay, so this search is for both positions?
Correct, it is.
Okay, so
well, if I could, it's for the court administrator that has the responsibility of the detention center. So it's for one position, right? So,
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Could I ask a question of Scott, please?
Councilmember Brosens.
Thank you. Scott, so what would be your procedure if we say go find us a court administrator that actually does Zelda's job? And we come back and say none of these applicants are acceptable. We want to break it into two jobs. What does your company do? I mean, would you charge us twice? Or how would you handle something like that?
That's a no one.
Well, I mean, it may come up. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if they're two separate searches, they're two separate searches, right? They're two different positions. That would be up to whatever the city wants to do in terms of whether they want to use an executive recruiter for both positions, or they could say, hey, go find us the court administrator. That's they might say, hey, we're going to do the detention center by, the internal HR department may do that. So it's not necessarily, predicated on two fees, if you will. I mean, so that, all I can say.
I have a question.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
And for Scott, so you could do a search for all of the above right off from the start, right? You could say we're looking for someone who has the capability to do both or one or the other. I mean, you could do that search, right?
Well, yeah, with the search that we've agreed to do right now is for the court administrator, which has responsibilities of the court and the detention center. So it's just one person. If you decide to split the role into two roles.
But I meant to possibly get more applicants so that we don't end up with a small pool. If you wrote it so that City of Aurora is looking for this, however, if you have strong background in one or the other, please, basically you still want those people to apply, then you would, go sort through them, narrow it down. It comes to council. Council then could have that time in between to analyze what might be best for the city, but then we'd have a larger array of applicants and we could decide, this particular applicant actually looks like they could do both, or we don't have strong enough applicants, but yet, look, we've got two great applicants that fit both categories. I was just trying to, instead of like two different searches, just encompass it into one.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a realistic possibility. We would just need to be up. We just need to know kind of out of the gate, and I think that also we would have to present a larger candidate pool. So would that would.
Okay. So I think yeah. Please proceed.
Sorry. I guess I was asking your opinion if you can do that, and I think you said yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Something.
But that would be under a different agreement, would it not? A different contract?
I mean, if what you're asking me to do is say, hey, listen, and we do have some references. I'm actually doing this at well, that's a little different story, but you could take this if you said to me, we'd like to see more applicants, because I do think that, again, part of your applicant pool, there's going to be people that are court administrators that are going to say, hey, I really like this opportunity because I have the opportunity to run a detention center as well. And some people will look at that as a full wraparound service, and that's going to excite them as a candidate. Now, it doesn't mean they have a lot of experience with running detention centers, or you could say somebody who's running a detention center wants to, be with the courts. I think you could look at that both ways. If what you're asking for is if we find in our candidate pool that we have people that are stronger on one side and then another group that's stronger on the other side, the answer is yes, we can do something along those lines. We've done that similarly in an ACM search recently where we found 2 ACMs, but they were one of the public safety one. So we can do something along that. I just need to know that up front. I think we need to be upfront with the candidates about that. And then we also need to probably build a little bit of time in because we're looking at an expanded candidate pool.
Okay. Let me just say this. I don't see how. I think Councilmember Hiltz is right in the sense that, we have to have a definitive direction coming out of council, and it ought to go through the policy committee first and then forward. But let me, I understand that Judge Day is now available, and let me defer to Judge Day for a minute. Chief Judge Day.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I was not anticipating to be answering any questions regarding the court administrator position, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me specifically as to that role and the role that the presiding judge position has with the court administrator.
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So Judge Day, I had asked, and we didn't expect you to be on the call, so thank you for joining us. But I had asked if you were so that we could get your opinion. We're talking about a search for basically Zelda's replacement to do the entire, all her responsibilities versus splitting it up or even possibly just widening the search to look at someone that, maybe all possibilities.
Right, and that's going to be, as I think a lot of people have already commented on, it's going to be left to the council as to what responsibilities you're going to either remove by way of ordinance or what specific responsibilities you want the court administrator to have. As you've all indicated, you're very fully aware of what the current responsibilities are of the court administrator. I support the hiring of a court administrator as soon as possible. So just because of the shared responsibilities that my position has with that court administrator's position. I feel I'm at a loss to try to provide you any type of comment, appropriate comment as to the responsibilities of the court administrator. I'm not here asking for any additional responsibilities, but if that's left to you as the city's leaders as to what you think the court administrator's responsibility should be.
If I may, Judge Day, I guess I was trying to get your opinion on, I know you need a court administrator ASAP, totally get that. But do you see any downsides to continuing to have it combined with the detention center? And if you don't, maybe you don't.
Well, again, we've only had one court administrator, and that was Dr. Du Bois, and she handled all of those responsibilities in the exceptional way that she handled those. And so can a single person handle all the responsibilities that were under Dr. Du Bois? Yes. I mean, she proved that you could, but that's because it was Dr. Du Bois. You know, a unique person with a lot of experience. Now, granted, the court administrator didn't have detention, but for, I think, the last, 12, 14 years or so, that was a decision made by the council at that time to put it under the court administrator. And Dr. Du Bois did an exceptional job of running the detention center in addition to her responsibilities as court administrator. Can it be done? Yeah. Is it a lot to do? Yeah, it's a lot to do.
Further discussion. I just don't think that we are, unfortunately, Judge, I don't think we're ready to move forward. I think we can't move forward unless we have a definitive view of what this position does. And let me, is the city attorney available?
Yes, sir.
So if we were going to move through the process to go back and start with a policy committee, would this take and I would like to see a formal vote on this where different ideas could come out in the form of an amendments. Would this could this come forward as a resolution or as an ordinance, or how would that be done?
Since there are two pieces as to the court administrator. There is a charter provision that doesn't mention the detention facility. There is also an ordinance that does talk about the detention facility, so that if you were going to take that away from this position, then that would require an ordinance to change it.
Okay, so is there objection to going back to kind of what Councilmember Hill said, and have this full discussion as to what this organization and what this person's scope of responsibilities is going to look like, in the form of an ordinance that would move forward from policy committee to study session to couldn't it move right from policy committee to, well, study session would be a good time to for all the members to discuss it, and then to a formal vote. I know that would take time, but I think it would give us we can't just be so ambiguous as to the direction for the contractor. Mayor Pro Tem.
My only concern, if I heard correctly, that we have an ordinance that talks about the court administrator, but does not mention the detention center, but then there is another ordinance that we would have to remove the detention center. That was, maybe I misunderstood that.
And if I could, Mayor Pro Tem, it's Dan. There is a charter provision that doesn't mention the detention facility, detention administrator. The code provision does mention the detention facility.
Okay, thank you. So my concern, though, even if we go back to policy committee study session, and let's say we just make a decision to split the two, it seems like we're not going to then look at all applicants. We might find an applicant that could do both. So you're making that decision to find two positions, right?
We will not go forward. The contractor will not go forward until this council has made a decision specifically on what we want.
No, I heard you. I heard you, Mayor. My concern is that if the council makes that decision, you are excluding people that could. You would be making that decision, but maybe we are overlooking someone that could do both.
It could be, but that decisions, it may be that that's the ultimate decision we arrive at.
So why can't we look for all of the above in the meantime, and then I guess look at the applicants who make that decision?
Mayor.
Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the intent of that. I think the point that I was trying to make earlier is that if we move forward and start paying for a search, and then council goes through this process and comes back and says, you know what, it's actually not, it's not financially responsible, it's not the best breakdown of duties. Dr. Du Bois really kind of developed that joint position over time. I don't know that it's really fair to ask someone to do both, just from a work-life standpoint, and how large the city is now compared to where we started, which I know was mentioned earlier, but starting the process and then coming back and saying, actually, that's not what we want. We're now paying Scott twice to do the same thing, which is great for Scott, but not great for our budget. For a much shorter time frame of holding off while that decision's made.
So I would agree with Councilmember Hills that the search would be suspended until council was able to provide a definitive direction. I'm going to ask the question: is there objection to the Hills proposal? Councilmember Gruber.
I object.
Okay. Further objection? Seeing no further objection, then the Hills.
Sorry, I had my hand up.
Okay, so Councilmember Gruber, Councilmember Berzins. Does anyone else object to the Hills proposal?
I think we have to remember that this is going to be a new council that really doesn't know Zelda and what Zelda does exactly. So going to have to get a lot of educating.
Further, are there any further objections?
Mayor, I'm going to object as well. I think that the search should start. I think that the added position, I understand what council wants to do. And I'm sorry if I wasn't at the beginning of these conversations, but I really think that the search should start to see if we do have some viable candidates out there, because you never know, and they may even be able to bring best practices in. So I'm objecting as well to the Hills proposal.
Is there further objection to the Hills proposal?
Yes.
Mayor Dave Gruber.
Okay, Mayor, Councilmember Gruber, I've got you down there. Did you want to comment?
Yes, I wanted to comment. I just wanted to point out that I agree with Councilmember Lawson on this one. If you look at our deputy city managers, every one of them have responsibilities that span many different areas. Furthermore, deputy city managers move where they change the responsibilities. It's not uncommon for senior leaders to have multiple organizations under their authority. And again, agreeing with Councilmember Lawson, the fact is that we could find candidates today that could fill this job, in which case this problem becomes moot because we can hire one of those right away. If we find out that there is no candidate that can do both jobs, then we would be in a position to split it. But splitting it now by saying it can't be done, when in fact it's been done for many years by the incumbent, that she has demonstrated that the job can be done by a single person. So I think we should proceed under the path that we have right now.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So, I mean, I think I kind of started that whole conversation about let's go ahead and do the search and just open it up. So I object.
Mayor, Councilmember Hills.
Councilmember Hills.
Yeah, I won't be here. I know there's others that want to get this started now because they are currently here. I won't be here either way. So I think it's fine with leaving this to the next council. But just to be clear, the intent is not to say whether or not, it's not to say, yes, we're splitting this position and then going back to committee. The whole point of going to committee is to discuss whether or not that is a viable option, or if that's something that needs to be done, because I don't think that we've ever, because these two positions merged together as two very totally distinct departments, that conversation is to see whether or not those duties should be split, not that they will be. They might not be. But I think something was raised earlier about there also being conversations about a conflict of interest, because if you're running the jail and then you're also running the court system, is there a incentive from an internal department standpoint to have those positions linked? I think we all can agree that we all trust Dr. Du Bois implicitly, And we have, but I don't know that the next person coming into a city that already has the problems that we have in some of these spaces isn't at least worth having a conversation about what's appropriate moving forward. But again, I won't be voting on this new person regardless. So I think
Further discussion on the Hills proposal.
Mayor,
Councilmember Gardner.
I'm going to object as well. My initial reaction to this conversation and kind of the thoughts that I've had since Dr. Du Bois left the city, and frankly, it was somewhat driven by her parting words, because of the changes and growth in the city. It will probably be challenging to find somebody to fill both positions. And so I have my doubts whether or not we'll be able to do that. But that being said, I feel like we should at least allow the opportunity for that to happen. We did have somebody, as I don't remember who said it, Councilmember Gruber perhaps, in that position previously that did both roles. We might find out that that's not going to happen, but I guess to me, I don't know how we can make that decision before we've actually analyzed the candidates that come in. That's pretty common in the business world. After posting a position, you make changes later, make changes to the scope of duties based upon the applicant pool that you're faced with. So that would be the route that I'd recommend. So I'd object as well.
With 5 council members having arisen in opposition, the Hills proposal does not move forward. Councilmember Gardner, can you restate this? If I understand you correctly, your view is to do the search for the position as it exists today. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should undertake both efforts concurrently. Start the search process, and then I guess it would be public safety, or I don't know what policy committee would start that conversation. Probably public safety, but start to have that conversation about what we want it to look like, and then we can merge those two efforts. We can say, okay, here's the result of our council conversations in terms of what we want this position to look like. Here's the pool of applicants that we have, and do those mesh up? If they don't, then okay, we need to go a different direction and hire a candidate that meets this and find someone for a different role. But I guess I don't want to shift the scope of the duties of the position until we know with certainty that there isn't going to be a candidate out there for that. So my recommendation should be to move forward with the search process, but also whoever's in charge of public safety next year, since it's obviously going to be a new council, start that conversation.
Okay. Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, all that's fine. Just to be clear, my proposal is not to determine whether or not we have a qualified candidate. It's to determine whether or not the roles as written is the appropriate way to move forward. And so if there is, just be mindful that if there is a discussion and public safety comes out with the recommendation and the council decides that the roles do need to be split, council will now have to go and walk back that position if the first thought is anyone qualified. I'm certain that we can find someone who's qualified for every position that we could possibly create, but whether or not that is the appropriate position to be moving forward, if that's the recommendation that comes out of public safety, which is where I'm assuming it would go, then hiring someone to do both would be setting them up for failure, because the recommendation would be to have those two positions split. So my proposal was just to have a conversation before spending a bunch of money without having an intended outcome from the conversation. But it's the majority's prerogative to move that forward without that information, and that's fine. But I just wanted to clarify my intent.
Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out that what we're doing is we're giving direction now that if this fails, we're expected to give direction as a council, knowing that there will be at least 4 new people who are actually making the decision. So we're giving direction on behalf of, we don't know who at this point, and we won't know who until tomorrow. And so that could potentially be really not the best use of the consultant's time, our time, the staff's time, etc.
Okay, so if I could restate Councilman Gardner's position, it's that we should simultaneously begin the search on the position as currently structured and simultaneously engage in a discussion as to what the structure should be. If we find a qualified applicant, and I'm going to defer to Councilman Gardner to make sure I got this right, that if we find a qualified applicant that we find acceptable, then we go with that in the existing structure. If we don't find a qualified applicant, we emerge through the process will be a different scenario in terms of the scope of duties. Am I correct in that, Councilmember Gardner?
That's correct. Ultimately, if the conversation and through public safety finds that this is what we want this position to look like, and we have a qualified applicant, then great. And if not, then at that time, I think we make a pivot and decide what the best path is forward.
Is there opposition to the Gardner proposal?
I thought it was the Bergen proposal.
Hiltz.
Well, Hiltz got shot down, unfortunately. Oh.
But I can still shoot this one down too, thank you.
Same one.
Ouch. Okay.
Mayor,
I just lost my video. But anyway, okay, is there objection to the Gardner proposal?
Mayor Coombs.
Councilmember Coombs.
Marcano.
I object.
Coombs objects.
Marcano.
Marcano objects.
Mayor, wasn't Gardner just helping you formulate your statement?
No, I went with, this is his proposal. I just was vetting it to make sure I understood it and that the members understood it.
Okay.
Other objection?
Mayor Murillo.
Hiltz. Murillo.
I have a question as well. Can I ask a question?
Please proceed.
I was wondering if it sounds, okay. I don't think that we should be starting a process without definitively clarifying that that is an appropriate way to move forward in terms of just job responsibilities. It was mentioned that we would start one process and then pivot to another. Can I get some clarity from someone, the consultant or city staff, of what that means? Does that mean we have a agreement with this company, they're going to put out a search, spend us certain dollars to push that message out, recruit for that particular position, and then at one point have to redo it potentially? Is that an accurate way to conceptualize that, what pivoting means in this situation?
Would staff like to respond to this? By Councilmember Gardner, this is your proposal. You might be able to answer this question as well.
I mean, I'm happy to explain what I mean, but I'm not sure she's interested in my opinion because she asked for staff. But what I mean by that is that it's not uncommon when doing hiring, especially in the private sector. Once you have a pool of applicants, you might make and in fact, the city has done this with hiring positions before. We've made adjustments to duties based upon the strengths and weaknesses of the candidates that we had for the position. And like I said, that's very common to happen in the private sector. And so, again, at that time, we could come out of that process of determining what we want the court administrator position to look like. We might decide we want it to look exactly like it does today. And we might also find that we have a candidate that can meet that. And that might be a win-win. We might find that, hey, we want it to look different. We want those two roles or those two, departments to be separated out. But hey, we have this candidate from the pool of applicants that would be great for one of those two roles. And so there's your position. So I don't think what that allows us to do is to move forward with the court administrator search, because we've heard from Judge Day and from others that we need to have that position filled in a timely manner. At this point, if we defer, we're looking another month, maybe 2 more months before we even start that process, which ultimately just pushes that down the road before we're able to have somebody start. So that's what I mean by that.
Mayor, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't want Councilmember Gardner's explanation again, just not because I don't value your opinion, Councilmember Gardner, but I already heard that from you. You know what I mean? So my point is that I don't necessarily, I understand your logic and that's your opinion. My opinion, though, and what I would like a response to from staff and or whomever else, is what that process looks like, because I have a concern. I understand that is how you could do things, but I think it makes sense for us to pause and question whether or not we should. Could and should are kind of the two paths here, in my opinion. So the conversation beforehand is, should these positions be as one? Is that the best way to move forward? And then should that be, whatever the outcome, then proceed with whatever the outcome looks like? Only because I don't want to, I guess, waste resources. That's how I feel about the other proposal. I'm not, again, wanted to clarify from staff what that would look like.
Councilmember Murillo, this is Ryan Lance. I can answer your question of what the process would look like and then what a pivot would look like. As it currently exists, we do have a job description that does have a court administrator with the detention responsibilities. And if there was clarification on if we wanted to change the job description or any tweaks, basic tweaks to it, we would do that. But for the most part, we would continue recruiting the position as Dr. Du Bois had it filled. If the applicant pool and the interview process didn't really warrant a qualified applicant and one that would satisfy the council, then at that point, the pivot would be we convene and really discuss at that time what was the issue of not finding that qualified candidate. It could be the market, it could be a lot of different factors, and we would assess it at that time. And if necessary, then we would potentially have a discussion with you guys to see if we do want to split the position and then what that would look like from a recruitment standpoint.
Further discussion? Is there, right now I have Coombs, Marcano, Hiltz, and Murillo in opposition. Is there further opposition? Seeing none, then we will proceed, or staff will proceed with the Gardner proposal. Are there any questions from staff on the Gardner proposal? Okay. Seeing none, then that is the direction. Item number 5A, ARPA funding. ARPA funding to assist in the capital development of Aurora's mental health proposed campus. I'm the sponsor of this. Debbie Stafford from Aurora Mental Health. Debbie, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I also am inviting Dr. Kelly Phillips Henry, our Chief Executive Officer, and Kathy Snell, our Chief Strategy Officer, to join us. We would like to give you a brief update. We're going to try to limit the time that we were allotted to respect your time, but we want to give you a brief update on where we are with our project. And so Kathy and Kelly, I hope that you're able to be there, and Kelly is going to move forward with our brief presentation.
So Debbie, to clarify, should we share our slides? Does the city have our slides?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I will share, Kelly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. Well, good evening, everyone. We certainly don't want to take up a bunch of your time. We were very much involved in speaking with you earlier this summer, sharing our vision for a safety net campus that really serves many of our underserved community. This location is off of Mississippi on Potomac, and just want to quickly give you an update in terms of where we're at with the process. We've met with many of you individually. Thank you, Mayor Kaufman, for inviting us to quickly give a brief update, and hopefully we can get to, yeah, there it goes. You almost had it, Kathy, on selecting the slide so that we can just try to make that as big as possible. As a reminder to everyone, you know, we offer a full continuum of care, behavioral health-wise. Behavioral health means substance use as well as mental health services. And for acute care, we offer crisis stabilization services and walk-in crisis services that are up on the Anschutz campus. In a very different part of town, we offer detoxification services and our medical assisted treatment services as folks step out of detoxification. So, at this point, we have a vision of trying to create a centralized campus to be able to provide that care in what is now considered nationally a best practiced approach to doing that. This update is to really identify the way this campus would best be able to do that. Kathy, I'm wondering if we can get that to full screen. Is that possible?
Sorry, Kelly, we're working on it. I am not very knowledgeable about WebEx, but I think we've got it.
Awesome, great. So we can page down. And just a quick reminder, we are one of many behavioral health providers in the community. We try to work with all of our partners to really serve a great demand and great need. And certainly through the pandemic, those needs have increased. What sets us apart as a community mental health center in the state of Colorado is that by statute, we are required to provide these services. Kathy, the slides are advancing now, and I don't know if you know how to control that or not. So, really, thank you. So by statute, we have to provide that full continuum of care. We can't just cherry pick certain services that we want to offer and not offer others. And so that full continuum definitely addresses many of those critical services that are needed right now in our community. So next slide. So as we came to you all in late June, the key piece that we were talking to you about is why now is the right time. And so just as a quick refresher, we are seeing a real demand for all behavioral health services. I know that's not a surprise to any of you. As we've met with most of you individually, we've been talking about this and many of the stories that you're personally hearing, not only for an increase in suicide attempts and completions, especially in our youth population, but also as it relates to opioid deaths in our population. COVID has been a really hard, isolating time for all of us, and people need a quick place where they can walk in, one centralized place to be assessed, and then be referred into the right treatment and care. Next slide. So as we spoke to you, we wanted to frame up that problem, and in a nutshell, our problem was 18 to 2 years ago, we started to look for a second detox location, and literally were unsuccessful in doing that. And that was largely due to two reasons. One was zoning, and the second was due to NIMBY. A lot of communities do not want these types of services in their backyard. So when we learned that it was very difficult to find a second location, we certainly wanted to protect our primary location, which is on the current campus in a building that was built in the early 80s, known as Jefferson Hills. We now own that location, but the building is very old. Our challenge is to get all of these services onto one campus and to pull all of our crisis stabilization and respite services off of the Anschutz campus, which right now is housed in an old Army barracks. We certainly are grateful to have been on the campus, but it is not a building that truly is the best way of treating individuals in crisis care. We do not have line of sight to every single individual's room. We also know there's other reasons that Anschutz would like to use that campus, and we want to be a good partner and hopefully be able to find a good resolution to that. We can expand our beds on this campus that we're currently on, but the building is old and it needs an updo, as my daughters would say about their hair. But we need to make sure that we can get it into a state-of-the-art facility. So what was our solution? Next slide. Our solution is to create a centralized campus in 3 phases. Many of those serving the underserved community. We are the detoxification center in Aurora. We are the place that has a crisis stabilization unit. We want to put these acute services together. And so under phase 1, you can see that that is the vision for Aurora Mental Health Center. And we've been out speaking with all of you about this, as well as state legislators, as well as many of our senators' aides at the federal level. This is an important initiative to us, and we believe it is for the community to best serve our community. Phase 2 of that would be able to bring physical healthcare and dental as well onto the campus. Those conversations have been with our partner Stride, which is a federally qualified health center. Phase 3 is to look at some form of affordable or supported housing. So that is our vision for the 7.3 acre campus. Next slide. So where are we at? That was the refresher, hopefully just to put your mind back on this, and the rest will go fairly quickly. Just wanted to tell you where we're at. That is our vision, is to create a 50,000 square foot building that would serve all acute care needs for a centralized location in Aurora. And you can see those services listed. And then the second, and the vision of that building for Stride, and then what we believe is possible for units for affordable or supported housing. So let me tell you a little bit about where that's going. Next slide. So this is the vision of what the campus would look like if you were to close your eyes and see it as it exists today. The building that is currently there sits where that parking lot is, which is why we were advised from 2 sets of developers and architects that to better use the full space that campus offers, it would be best to do a scrape and rebuild to allow for more services to be offered on the campus. Next slide. This is a vision just to give you a sense of Potomac and I-25. The housing building would back to 225. We would probably also have some branding up on that housing that did let folks from the highway know that Stride and Aurora Mental Health Center were also on that campus, but really allowing it to be multi-use. Next slide. So where are we at? We've taken you here before, and when we were here in June, we were at the green circle. So you can see that we've made really good progress in the 4 months since we were here speaking with you last. And we are now working with the developer to begin to carry out the actions needed. And so in that blue circle, you can see what is below that, which is some of the quick pieces I will walk you through now. But we're making good progress. Again, our initiative started 2 years ago with that search for a second detox. We couldn't find it. We are able to work with our partner, Jefferson Center for Mental Health, to purchase that land, to then begin this visioning. And those are all the steps you've seen that we've gone through. So we are well on our way to hopefully putting a shovel in the ground in 2022. Next slide. So in terms of what that means and what we're out speaking to all leaders for this one-time opportunity with ARPA funding, which really does line up well with mental health specific to addictions as well as suicide and mental health crisis, this is where it shakes out for that structure to be built. We certainly, and we've tried to clarify this, but I want to make sure everyone understands, we have the ongoing funding in terms of how we build these services to sustain this campus and our building. What we don't have as a not-for-profit is the capital to be able to afford putting all of this together in the new building. And so this is what it would cost. And we recognize that not any one source would be able to fund this entirely. Our vision is to really braid these funds across many different lines, including 2 asks to different counties, both Adams and Arapahoe. We're talking with state leaders. We hear there might even be an opportunity for a match from the state. And we're trying to also leverage any consideration from Senator Hickenlooper and/or Bennett. Next slide. So quickly, scope 1 of where we're at in phase 1, these are the steps that we are currently involved in. We've selected our team. We're working on that master site planning. We've been in conversations with Stride. We hope over the next couple of weeks to really iron out that part of the deal so that Stride is locked in and we're moving forward arm in arm to really create full care for our community. And many of the other pieces in terms of valuation, so we can start to work with various subdivisions of the Anchorage. Next slide. Also in this phase, we've already done some key selections for phase 1. So we have design professionals already on board So this is a quick win for us. We are moving with this process quickly. We have an engineering firm, we have our architects involved, and we held that kickoff meeting with all parties just a few weeks ago. Next slide. We're also going to be talking and figuring out next steps with a housing partner. There will be an RFP that goes out that will be handled by our developer. We hope that then there will be a selection by early December so that we have all parties on board and ready to go to work on this campus. Next slide. So then what happens? Phase 2 is the big one, and we hope that much of that will begin to occur in summer, fall of 2022, and really get that underway and stick a shovel in the ground. And then finally, hopefully get to a grand opening a year or so later. So Kathy, if you can advance one more time, you can see that those are the dates right now that we are targeting if we can really begin to shape the plan for the funding of this first building. So we are in an ongoing process right now, meeting with all of our leaders across the city, across our counties, across the state, to try to braid these funds together. Again, this is a one-time ask for capital dollars. Then the design and it really kicks off in the spring. And then we put a shovel in the ground, hopefully celebrating that with all of you, so that hopefully by the end of 2023, we are bringing clients full force into this building and really expanding the beds and the needs for our community. So that is what we have for you tonight. We did not want to make this long since we know that we've been with you before, but just wanted to share our excitement and really advancing in these plans. We do understand from the city manager that there will be a process. We want to honor that process and we'll be prepared to submit that application if and when that time comes. So thank you for hearing where we're at with our updates, and we'll take any questions.
Let me just say first that in talking to Governor Polis, in terms of leveraging state ARPA dollars, that he thought this would be a great project. Because it's a one-time capital construction project, and you've all been working on it for a while, so it's pretty much shovel ready. So obviously we have to bring our state legislators on board as well as our city council. Further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Mayor Dave Gruber.
Councilmember Gruber.
I am very excited about this. I think ARPA is an opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. I know it's certainly the first time in my life I've seen it, and I suspect it'll be the last time. As a result of that, we have the opportunity to deal with the homeless issue, deal with suicide prevention, deal with child mental health, and many of the other issues that we have within our community. The reason I like this one so much is that we're talking about using Aurora ARPA dollars to support an Aurora function to support Aurora residents. And I think this is a well thought out plan, and it has my strong support. I know tonight we're not going to make the funding decision because the process is coming through, but I'm very excited to see this come forward.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen and then Councilmember O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I really enjoyed the presentation. Obviously, you've done a lot of work on it, and I also think it's a really good plan. I like that you would have ongoing operational costs that you would be able to cover, and that you are looking just for capital funding. And I also like that you're looking not just to the city, but to the counties and to the state, and having that broad range of partnerships, I think is really important. I also, of course, I think, a lot of our problems with the homelessness is drug addiction, and not all, but a good portion of it. And I do like the fact that there would be some more detox services for those that really need that help. I think the goal is hopefully to, not only help people with mental illness, but with that substance abuse, and getting them back to being, happy and productive in society. So I think the goal is really good. And then of course the affordable housing piece as well. So I think you do have a really good plan. So I appreciate the presentation.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say that really echo a lot of what my colleagues have already said. I'm very supportive of this project. I think the proposal is great. I'm really excited to have this in Ward 4. And I just want to thank y'all for acknowledging and honoring the formal process that we'll be going through. And just one little comment on what you showed us from the most recent site renderings. Less turf, please, or at the very least, make sure that we're using native grasses there. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Coombs.
Yes, thank you. So absolutely understand that we need this. I support this. I do have a question about the $8 to $10 million ask. It seems like that's based on the counties providing 1/3, the city providing 1/3, the state providing 1/3 for this initial building and the cost of that initial building. And my understanding is that there's quite a bit of additional money available from the state. I believe that there are $500 million or $550 million in ARPA that funds that were allocated to the state legislature to spend. And some of those were then directed for capital construction costs for community mental health centers. And then there's also, I think, the other ARPA funding for behavioral health is what the governor is looking at contributing. And so my question is really just, are we getting everything that we can from other levels of government? Because we have a total of $63 million that the city is getting. So asking for fully 1/6 of that when we have additional asks from other mental health partners, some of which we haven't even seen, feels like a lot. So I guess I would just like to see kind of what other state level funding has been considered besides just the match that's being offered by the governor.
Yes, I certainly appreciate that. And we've gone out to every potential source. If I had one wish on how we had redone how ARPA is rolling out, is that there was a consistent timeline across every source that needed to make the decisions. Because what we seem to be running into as we meet with different state and counties, and obviously the city, is everyone has their own timeline and different processes. And so we are hearing different timelines of when folks will be making decisions. And that makes it really hard to come to you and asking a very good question and give you a clear answer. What we do know is that this is the city of Aurora. These services are for Aurora. And so, you know, that is why we have spent a lot of time speaking with all of you individually. Is first and foremost, this benefits our community. And so that's why we have started this process with council. We have already applied for Arapahoe County. Our submission will go in this week for Adams County. We have engaged with state leaders to the extent possible for the dollars, Councilwoman Combs, that you've mentioned. I am getting a lack of clarity thus far on what the State Behavioral Health Task Force will or won't allocate money to. So I've asked if there will be regional considerations. They can't give me an answer to that yet. So unfortunately, we're sitting with a lot of uncertainty. I wish, just like you, that I could have some more clear understanding of what's on the table or what's off the table. But we keep engaging and we keep trying to get any clarity we can.
Further discussion, Councilmember Lawson.
Yes, and Councilmember Coombs kind of addressed some of the questions I had. I pulled up the Behavioral Health Transformation Task Force recommendations, and although they're kind of broad, it seems like to me, your organization would fit into like what some of these recommendations are. And I guess what I understand, I know it's tough to get state money, but I want to make sure also, like Councilmember Coombs says, that we're leveraging the dollars because we do have other organizations as well that are in needs that, you know, for needs of the city and for the community as well. So I know that it's hard for the state dollars, but I really hope that you're leveraging that, because one thing that you guys have that other nonprofits don't have is that you have a task force that provide recommendations. Other nonprofit organizations cannot get state funding. So
Correct.
That's kind of the thing I have. And I do think by reading this report, and I read it pretty thoroughly over the weekend, it does fit the scope of what we're doing in the city of Aurora. So I am hoping that you do leverage those dollars because, again, you know, we have other organizations as well. And I want to make sure that we're fitting whatever the needs are of this community and this city. And I definitely think it's a good project and I support it, but I just want to make sure that we're leveraging our dollars as well. And if you can get more from the state and and especially if you have this report behind you from the task force and their recommendations, which I think has a lot of pull compared to other groups that probably don't have anything, I think it's important to actually solidify that kind of opportunities.
Yeah, I want to support your comments. We have read the report thoroughly as well. We've been in touch with our state trade association, and what we are hearing at this point is that they are focused on statewide issues thus far and are not considering anything regionally. They're looking at workforce, they're looking at training, they're looking at creating a pipeline. And so we have certainly knocked on those doors. We did it again as recently as last week. At this point, they have not provided any clarity around whether they will entertain regional asks at this point.
No further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat the same things. So I agree with the comments that were just said. My additional ask is when we do start to gain more clarity, I'm hopefully moving towards like a, you know, that clarity around timelines. Can we just include that in the future conversations to be part of that, like our COVID conversations? I think it would be helpful for me from a decision-making standpoint. So that would be my only additional ask is when you do get that to just share more information with us on that.
Further discussion.
Berzins.
Councilmember Berzins.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was clarifying to see the three buildings laid out on the acreage that you have. And me being in construction, I know that a price that you get in 2021 is not going to be the final price in 2023. So I would urge you to think about that, and knowing that the price of materials are going up, labor's going up, everything's going up. So just know that price will not be the same. It's going to be higher, and do plan on that. But to get back to the project itself, I love the location. The location couldn't be better. It's right off the interstate, right off of 225, and it has a major hospital right across the street. So I think you hit a home run on that location. It's going to be so convenient for our police to take a person to the detox center rather than having to go onto the Fitzsimmons campus. So I just wanted to say that. Good job.
Thank you.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Murillo.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about this project. There was another proposal from Mile High Behavioral Health about a similar concept, which would be kind of different, you know, similar concept, different location, but some of the really positive things we talked about in this conversation. Are we going to bring that up for conversation and study session as well?
Let me staff. I think the process is there will be a forum where all proposals can be brought forward. Am I correct in that, Jim?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. That's the plan that we talked to you about October 4th for discussion. So we're working on that process right now, and it be getting into place pretty soon.
Mayor, can I have a follow-up question?
Please proceed.
Yeah, so I think that's great. I think we should honor that, but this was a specific presentation that is going to also honor that process as well. So I was wondering if we were going to have a presentation from that organization to present their proposal in the future as well, because I think there's some synergies between the concept that Environmental Health is presenting and then that particular proposal as well.
Well, I'd say that the mayor sponsored this item on the agenda for tonight. This wasn't brought forward by staff.
Oh, okay. So the mayor the mayor would have to propose an additional presentation in the future if we'd like that.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this was brought forward by the mayor.
Okay.
Any member can bring forward a policy, but there will be a forum where all proposals can be brought forward.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Well, I just want to personally thank Debbie Stafford for mentioning to me that this whole center could be named after me, the Kaufman Memorial Center. But I looked at memorial, and you have to be dead to do that. So I think I'll pass, Debbie. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I guess your personal $1 million donation might have to be reconsidered.
Okay. Further discussion. Seeing none, we will defer judgment on this until we are in the appropriate phase of the process. But I think this is a great proposal, and I want to thank Aurora Mental Health for bringing it forward and for giving us a presentation tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The time is now 7:46. Let's take a break until 7:51. Council stands in recess until 7:51. The study session of the Aurora City Council is now back in session. Item number 3A, 2021 International Building Code Adoption. Jose Rodriguez, Building Plan Review Manager.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Rodriguez. I'm the Building Plan Review Manager for the Building Division, and I have a quick PowerPoint to discuss or to just present what the 2021 code adoption is. Showing my screen. Having a little difficulty here. All right. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So first slide here is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, the use of building codes keep building occupants safe. This next slide shows that the building codes are on a 3-year cycle, and currently we are on the 2015 codes, and now we're wishing to go to the 2021 versions. These are the codes that are up for adoption. There are 8 codes. These are the municipalities around the area that either have or will be going to the 2021 codes. And this slide shows some of our outreach. We have posted on our website an email address that applicants concerned people can email and send us questions regarding the 2021 code adoption. We also put together an email blast out to contractors and builders who have done business with us over the past year, announcing that we were proposing going to the 21. And this slide, I defer to Brandon Camarada in our planning department.
Thank you, Jose. Brandon Camarada, Planning Department. As per the request of the PED committee, we've included zoning information related to tiny homes and shipping containers as habitable structures in the backup for this building code item. The clarification being made in the building code will not expand or contract the allowances for either of those structures in the zoning code. Jose.
Thank you, Brandon. And this last slide is just a question to council.
Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So my question is just to what extent in the consideration of adopting the international building codes, have y'all looked at the international green building codes as well? And what sections might be applicable to the city of Aurora?
That code was looked at and evaluated. However, that code does cover many of our departments, and I would have to confer with the others in those departments to see and understand what the impacts would be of that green code.
Mayor?
Councilmember Rosenstock.
Thank you. I guess you said that we normally do this every 3 years, but now it's been 6 years. Why wouldn't we? What is the hesitation? It seems like we've always updated them as things change. So isn't this basically just renewing what we normally do, changing a few things?
That is correct. However, the process is very long, and when we come to code book orders, those are very pricey. So it's a long, lengthy process. For instance, this process has been approximately 18 months already of evaluation of the older code versus the newer code. So if we were to have to do that every 3 years, we would be spending tons of man hours and money just for the code books to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Mayor Dave Gruber.
Councilmember McConnell, then Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you, sir. So Jose, for clarification, is the International Green Code just shelved, or is that still being evaluated through a separate process? It was my understanding this is happening simultaneously. Sorry, go ahead.
Don't know. The green code is not part of this adoption. As I mentioned, it would take many other departments to come together, and so we can understand all the impacts.
Councilmember Gruber.
Mayor, I support this. Jose, I want to thank you for the work that you've done. I also want to thank you for the modifications that you made as a result of the PED. Just wanted to mention as well that there's some issues with federal funding on different grants if we don't have the most modern code. And so I think it's important for us to support this moving forward. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3A forward? Seeing no objection, item number 3A will move forward. Item number 3B, 2021 International Fire Code Adoption. Deputy Chief Kane Hills.
Yeah, good evening. I don't have the ability to share my screen right now. I don't know if Cecilia, you can facilitate that or not. There we go. So just to kind of piggyback off of what Jose just presented, the International Fire Code and the International Building Code are adopted at the same time because the requirements in the IFC are reflective of the current IBC. And to go a little further into why isn't it adopted every 3 years, it's really because of the time frame that it takes to do the adoption with all the stakeholder engagement and identifying the differences in the code from the previous year. So historically, as long as I've been here, and I know Scott Bird, this will be, I think, the third adoption process, and we do that alternating 3 years, and then we skip a year. So the last one that I went through was 2012. No, I'm sorry, 2009. We skipped 12, went to 15, skipped 18, now we're on 21. And again, if you adopted this code every 3 years, you would spend almost 2 years adopting the new code that you just adopted for the next code that is in line, if that makes sense. So with that, I do have a presentation I did present in Public Safety and Courts. This was provided in the backup. I can certainly go through each slide, or I could pick the components out of this presentation and discuss it further of what I think you might be interested in. But if someone has questions, please stop and obviously let me know. So moving forward here, really the internal external stakeholder collaboration and communication process involve these folks: Business Advisory Board, Building Department, Obviously, they reach out and communicate tax and licensing, legal, and community engagement. Another notable piece to this, which is important, I think, is that there will be a notice of public hearing issued, so that if people have questions, they want to come forward, business owners, community members, they can access the IBC, all the codes were referenced previously by Jose, and then also the International Fire Code as well. And then that notice will be, I believe, November 22nd at that council meeting. Moving forward, these 4 chapters were included in the 2021 IFC, which weren't there previously. So just real quick, when there's an adoption process ongoing, not only do we look at from the last year, 2018 to 2021, but we go back all the way to 15, and then we basically build a very large matrix, if you will, that identifies the differences in each code, if there was a significant difference or it stays the same. In this case, there were 4 chapters added to the 2021 IFC, and basically what it was a consolidation of these topics: energy systems, higher education laboratories, processing and extraction facilities, storage of distilled spirits and wines, that were kind of all over the code rather than just being in one place that could be referenced. So it was a consolidation. The other significant changes are listed here, chapter 3, chapter 4. But really, I think the important piece, and again, if someone has additional questions, let me know, are the amendments that we made specific for the city of Aurora. So I'll jump to those. So here we have a Board of Appeals, which I'm on the agenda for the next item as well. That's an intergovernmental agreement for a regional fire code Board of Appeals process. And there is a provision, 111.1 in the 2021 IFC. And we've been a member of that appeal process since, I believe, 2011. But some of the stakeholders have changed. So that's why we're redoing the IGA for the next agenda item. But that is the Board of Appeals 111.1 that you'll see in the ordinance. Violation of penalties, the increased amounts, stop work violation penalty reflective of, I believe it's $2,650 maximum. Then we have the fire apparatus road difference, and what we did there was change the width requirements on a corner, basically 3 feet additional width requirement if there's a fire hydrant there, and that's for obvious reasons, in that if a fire engine has to actually connect to that actual fire hydrant, it would take additional area or length in order to actually accomplish that, versus just the turning ratio around a corner, if that makes sense. Fuel dispensing distance allowance, there's a chart, and that was just included based on if there's a grade higher than where the dispensing facility is at, that we would reduce the amount spacing requirements. Meaning if the facility is above grade, above hill from the dispensing, typically fuel doesn't run uphill, so we were certainly agreeable to amending that. Security gates on apparatus roads, appeal of reinspection fee, that also goes back with the Board of Appeals. Ceiling height storage, a new section in the code, 315-3. It stipulates that you could have an 18-inch clearance at the storage location in a building if it's against the wall. And the previous code was, the new code, they wanted to increase the height to 18 inches from the top of the ceiling. And we're not agreeable to that, just because if it's in the center of the building or on the sides of the building close to exterior walls of support, it should be the same distance. As you all know, fire spreads, and if it encroaches on the wall and supports of the structure, that's just as important as if it was in the middle of the structure. So we want to be staunch on 24-inch clearance from the sprinkler heads in all areas. The elevators in service. This kind of was facilitated by some of the occurrences at Heather Gardens specifically, where their elevators weren't operational. And we built an internal policy to address that, so that the requirements are, once we're notified that there is not an operational elevator in the building, we will issue notice that it needs to be fixed. And if there's maintenance ongoing, there needs to be at least one operational elevator in the building at all times, for obvious reasons, for not only fire evacuation and access, but for any emergency medical situations that occur. Source 2015, 18, and 2021 IFC. That concludes my presentation, unless there
Are there any questions? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the 2021 International Fire Code adoption forward? Seeing none, item number 3B will move forward. Item number 3C, resolution approving Regional Fire Code Board of Appeals, IGA. Deputy Fire Chief Hills.
Yeah, going back to, I just touched on it a little bit. So the Intergovernmental Regional Fire Board of Appeals, it just changes the stakeholders. We've had this in place since 2011. The new stakeholders are South Metro, City of Sheridan, West Douglas Fire Protection, Jackson Fire Protection, City of Aurora, and Bennett Fire Protection. And there has to be basically a makeup of 5 people representing the industry, one of which a design professional, fire protection engineer, industrial safety professional, general contractor, and a general industry or business representative. Basically, if there's a disagreement with some of the fire code interpretation that our inspectors issue, there is an avenue now for the occupant or owner to appeal it through this board. And basically it's appeals of orders. If we were to issue a stop use order, or require some renovations to the permitting process with the assistance of the building department, et cetera, they could then go through this appeal board and hear and have these other professionals weigh in on the decision whether or not to uphold the violation, or even come up with an amendment that's agreeable to the group as a whole. So this request is to approve the IGA and move forward for the Regional Fire Code Board.
Are there any questions on item number 3A? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item 3C? Is there any objection to moving item number 3C forward? Seeing none, item number 3C will move forward. Item number 3D, repeal of stable license. Trevor Vaughn.
Yes.
Licensing. Please.
Yes, this one's fairly straightforward. When we reviewed our code, looking at this license, I can't really see a purpose for needing it in place when we have the ability to either revoke a general business license. The codes, it basically references other state law and city codes in regards to animal welfare. So in talking with animal care, we don't believe this license is needed in order to meet our regulatory goals.
Discussion, questions to staff? Seeing none, is there, I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Councilmember Burzins.
Thank you. Thank you, Trevor. You've never led us astray before, but I have a question though. These are businesses, aren't these businesses taking in money? And I feel for them, but is that really fair for them not to have a business license when everyone else has to have a business license?
Oh no, they'll still have a general business license. Right now, they have to have a separate additional license, and this is removing that additional license, so they don't have to have that.
Okay. I didn't see that in here. Okay, then I'm fine with it. I thought you were doing away with their business license too. Okay.
Further discussion? Is there any objection to moving item number 3D forward? Seeing none, item number 3D will move forward. Item number 3C, alcohol beverage festival permit. Trevor Vaughn.
All right, and this relates to a recent bill that went through the state legislature that authorized these alcohol beverage festivals. Previously, in order for someone to kind of have a festival where they would serve any alcohol at that festival other than wineries, they would need a special event permit, and that required a nonprofit in order to obtain that other location. The state bill allowed for the setup of a local permitting process. We recommend having that process in place. A lot of jurisdictions are moving in that direction so that we can ensure that these events are run safely and properly, and we have a local review on them.
Further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3C forward? Seeing none, item number 3C will move forward. Item number 3F, short-term rental regulations. Trevor Vaughn.
Okay, and this item is related to short-term rentals, Airbnbs, as what they're commonly known as, VRBO. About 5 years ago now, we came to council and we proposed regulating these as a home occupation. Council at that time wanted to ensure that, the majority of council wanted to ensure that we didn't have investment properties where people weren't living there and they were just renting them out short term. A number of reasons for that, one of being affordable housing, another being character of the neighborhood. The regulations that we're proposing here are kind of an update to help us enforce that a little bit more efficiently by, instead of just having it in the zoning code, duplicating those regulations more specifically in business regulations. And then also putting in some regulation on the hosting providers themselves, similar to what Denver has done, so that we can get some efficiency out of having them make sure that before a posting goes up, that posting has a general business license, which is what's required of that. So Denver's seen some success with that. The other thing is making sure that we can get some response when it's obvious that the individual isn't living at the house that they're renting out. And I'll give you an example. We had one recently that was getting neighborhood complaints that was listed on the short-term rental website, but the individual listed their place as residence right there on their posting as Colorado Springs. So it was fairly obvious that they weren't living there. We asked the site to just remove the listing since it was in violation of our codes. Instead, they just simply said they sent a note to that individual saying you just need to comply with your local codes. Only about a third of people get a license before they actually put a listing up. So we have to go through an effort and spending some resources to find the addresses of these properties. So we're trying to be a little bit more efficient on that and also being more responsive when we receive neighborhood complaints of someone not living there. One other provision we put in that is of note is that to help us enforce this is that there's a 180-day limit if you're doing the entire property where you're not on site. And that's just kind of another piece of evidence that the person isn't actually living at that location and they're engaging in short-term rentals. That doesn't apply if they're doing part of the home or they have kind of a separate unit of the home and they're still living there. That's still a partial home rental. And so that wouldn't stop them from doing that, but it's a kind of another approach because we have had a number of people try to cheat that provision by they'll put their voter registration to the city of Aurora, put their driver's license here, but we find out that they are actually living somewhere else and kind of work in the system. So trying to better address that.
Questions, further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving?
Mayor.
Councilmember Coons.
Just took me a second to unmute. I apologize. Just wanted to thank you, Trevor, for this. I know that I've heard some concerns from my constituents at times, and that, there is a real need to make sure that we don't have properties being used only for short-term rentals and not also for our residents to be living in them. So really appreciate you bringing forth these changes.
Is there any further discussion on item number 3F? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item 3F forward? Seeing none, item 3F will move forward. Item number 3G, tax administration clarifications. Trevor Vaughn.
Right. This ordinance, I believe, is mostly technical in nature. I don't think we have anything in here that's controversial. Mainly, this is items we've learned as we administer the tax code and work with taxpayers where there could be clarification and improvements in the code in regards to administration of it. And I won't run through all the provisions unless you want me to, or if there's anything specifically you want me to address.
Further discussion, questions? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3G forward? Seeing none, item number 3G will move forward. Item number 4A, resolution authorizing police defined benefit plan option. Terry Velasquez.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item provides for a resolution authorizing the police defined benefit plan option and the related documents to implement this plan. The process to develop the police defined benefit plan option began in February of 2020 with City Council authorization at the winter workshop. With almost 2 years of work, the police defined benefit plan option development is nearing completion. And with council's approval of the resolution and related documents, the plan will begin January 1st, 2022. I would like to recognize the key team members that have been instrumental in the development of this plan. They include Cindy Burley, partner, Davis Graham and Stubbs LLP, Joel Stewart, principal and consulting actuary of Milliman, Jared Martin, principal consultant, Innovest Portfolio Solutions LLC, Lieutenant Brian Kelly, president, Aurora Police Money Purchase Pension Plan, Detective Doug Doffelt, treasurer, Aurora Police Money Purchase Pension Plan, Han Hernandez Perez, assistant city attorney, and Jason Batchelor, deputy city manager. And if council would like, they could go directly to questions. I also have Cindy Burley, who could present a brief overview of the resolution and the related documents.
Other questions of staff?
Mayor.
Councilmember Hills.
I think a brief presentation for the record would be helpful. I don't think that we've had one on this since, I don't know, probably a year ago.
Well, please proceed with presentation.
Yeah, so I'm Cindy Burley. I'm a partner at Davis Graham and Stubbs, and I've been intimately involved in working on these documents. And let me give you a brief overview before we get into the individualized documents. And Adrian has been so kind as to put one of them up. We're going to have 6 documents that are in front of you in your packet. And let me just tell you what they are. The first one is the summary of changes. The second is the money purchase pension plan itself, and amended and restated to take into account what we're doing. Then there's a defined benefit plan. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with FPPA. And let me just pause on that just a minute. It's critical that we have the MOU in place, and we will get it in place. FPPA has, General Counsel of FPPA has reviewed all of these documents that you'll be seeing, and not the resolution, but the plan documents, and has approved and agrees with them, and has agreed in the MOU that they will not challenge Aurora going forward with this hybrid plan. And they also are agreeing to keep the police officers in their death and disability plan. So were critical to get those agreements from FPPA. Then you have a resolution which is summarizing all of this stuff, as well as a lot of lingo for the IRS. And then finally you have a timeline. Big picture, what are we doing? No, we're just going to still stay on the first document. Big picture, what we've got here is that the money purchase plan is being revised to offer an option. And the option is you can stay in the money purchase plan, which has a 12% employer and a 12% employee contribution. Or if you like, you can opt into the defined benefit option as well. So we call it a hybrid plan. It allows you, you would still have the money purchase piece, but your contribution, your own contribution is reduced to 3.75%. Employer contribution is reduced to 3.75%. The difference between the two, the 8.25% employer and employee, would go into funding the defined benefit plan. So for those people who want a DB plan, they can make an irrevocable election to have the DB plan option as well as the money purchase. The money purchase piece in and of itself satisfies the requirement for a plan in lieu of Social Security, so you can remain out of Social Security vis-a-vis the way the money purchase plan was designed. Then with the defined benefit plan, essentially it has a 2% formula, 2% times the average monthly compensation, which is a high 3 formula, times your years of credited service is what you get as a pension capped at 90%. That plan design also allows you to purchase service. So if you've been a police officer with the city of Aurora, you can buy all that service in the defined benefit component. And so you can make up for all the time that you've had in there into the DB piece. You'll notice that we've got, you can also buy up to 5 years of other qualified service, other places. And so you'll notice in November 30th, 2021, effective date on this document we have up. That's critical because starting December 1st, we need to start getting elections in place for those people who are currently officers who want to move into the defined benefit option effective January 1, 2022. So we need to have the election period of December 1st through December 15 for the regular officers. If you're in qualified military service, we've extended that till December 31st. That would get you in on day one. If you miss the day one election, of course, you can always buy that service yourself, but if you want to get in, you can get in immediately on day one. And again, so this first summary is the summary of how we get that irrevocable election in place. Let's scoot down a little bit on this page and various definitions. And of course, we have to have the irrevocable election in place. Let's go to the next page. And you can see the reductions in the contributions. You'll see the 3.75% reduction. And you'll see another piece that we did with this in item 10 on this page is to eliminate in-service distributions for participants, new hires. The reason we did that is because it's we found a number of officers basically take out all their money, spend it, and it's not there for retirement. It's a very bad plan design to have that in-service distribution. And so prospectively, we could eliminate it for new hires, and that's what this piece does. Item 11 expands the Pension Plan Administration Committee to add ex officio members. The finance director and a deputy manager will be included, and they will be on both the money purchase side and on the defined benefit side. And item 12 allows for the trust-to-trust transfer from the money purchase plan over to the defined benefit plan in order to buy service credit. Let's move on to any questions on this document. If we have no questions on this document, let's move forward to the next document, which you'll just see is the plan document itself for the money purchase, amended and restated, as we said, November 30th, 2021. Any questions? This is just a plan document that does everything that we just talked about. So no questions on this document. Let's move forward to the next document. And you'll see that the next document's the retirement plan. This is the defined benefit plan. It goes into effect 1/1/22 because that'll be when the first payroll period that we have. And I just talked about some of the main features of that plan. It also contains a drop, which is a deferred retirement option plan component. And that allows people to basically retire in place for up to 3 years and build up sort of a DC account within the plan that they can take some cash with them when they leave if they want to. Let's move on to the, any questions on the defined benefit plan component? The next document you have is the MOU, and we want to go to page 2 of this. Critical in this was the bottom of page 2. The first item on the bottom of page 2 is the agreement by FPPA, which they've agreed to. They're not going to challenge the hybrid plan. And also the second piece of this is they're going to let each of the officers remain in the death and disability coverage provided by FPPA in the statutes. So let's, any questions on the MOU with FPPA? Let's go on to the next document, which is the resolution itself. Resolution's important. And the resolution will have attached to it as Exhibit A, that defined benefit plan, which we just went forward with. On the resolution, let me just run through in general what the whereas clauses do. The whereas clauses represent that FPPA doesn't object. Also, that the members of the police pension board have voted in favor of adding this option. The employee, it's been taken to a participant vote by the participants, and they have voted to add the hybrid option. And it recites that you want to create the plan, which we have to do, effective 1/1/22. And then also the next bunch of whereas clauses deal with IRS pickup provisions. The IRS, in order to have pre-tax contributions going to a defined benefit plan, requires that we have lots of lingo. It's gobbledygook to most people who are not in the tax world, but basically it's saying these contributions are mandatory. You can't opt out of them. And in which case those contributions with the splits that we talked about will be paid to the plans. So let's go on to the next page. And the next page in here deals with, so page 2 at the bottom of the page has got, let's stop right there, says that the city council approves the adding the defined benefit plan in substantially the form. We've shown you the document, and that will be attached as Exhibit A. Section 2, the mayor's authorized to sign the MOU with FPPA, sign the plan documents, sign the DB plan, sign the money purchase components, all of the hybrid plan. So that's authorizations to do whatever is necessary that's not inconsistent with this resolution to move forward. Item section 3 on the next page, the city manager. So there's lots of things that we've already had to do, such as getting plan documents drafted. We're working on a submission to the IRS to get approval of the plan. You get a determination letter, which says that the plan, the documents are good. We've had to hire Milliman to do administration on the plan. You'll be hiring Innovest, and we're taking a bunch of these steps that Terry is signing off on. So city manager, his or her designee, which will be Terry, have taken steps to get this ball rolling, and then eventually they'll be assigned over to the pension plan committee once we get the plan in place. Now let's look at items. Section 4, 5, 6, 7, basically 4, 5, and 6 deal with that IRS gobbledygook that I talked about of, well, okay, we have to have pickups and it has to be in accordance with the IRS revenue rulings, and it's pre-tax and the money goes in. So then when we go to 7 and 8, if you're a person who just decided you want to stay in the money purchase piece, which is totally your option, you're going to have the 12 and 12 contribution going into the money purchase. Sections 9 and 10, if you're someone who elected to go in, you want both the DB and the money purchase piece of it, you're going to have 3.75% of your participant contribution going to the money purchase. You're going to have 3.75% of the employer contribution going to the money purchase, and you're going to have 8.25% of your own contribution and 8.25% of the employer contribution going to the defined benefit component. And again, we need, let's go on to 11 and 12. We need you guys to approve this so that it can go into effect immediately, because the next day after you approve it, we have the pension committee all lined up to sign and ink and approve the documents. And then they'll come back to Mike to sign off on the pension, the various other documents that he doesn't sign off on, and Mayor Coffin. And this has been, this resolution's been signed off by Hans, as you'll see on the next page. Any questions on the resolution component? If not, let's go on to the next document, which is our timeline. And we're just starting at item 52, which is where we are. We've taken 51 steps already. Today's a study session, which we're asking for this to move forward. Item 53 is when you'll actually approve the various documents and the resolutions, the plan and trust. Then we'll go, as you see, on November 9th to the Aurora Police Board meeting. Then we'll go ahead and get the trust set up. We'll be getting the various, engagements of various parties to serve as attorney and actuary. The bylaws for the committee will go into place. Starting December 1, as we said, we're going to start to get those election forms in place. Go on to the next page, and you'll see that we are going to file with the IRS for a determination letter. Then we'll be filing for a private letter ruling about the transfers primarily. We'll be transferring over anything that will be held in the cities over to the pension committee once they're trustees. We'll be starting the hybrid plan on January 1. In order to have a valid trust, we have to have funding. So there'll be an initial funding of $100. Then there'll be a big funding on January 7th over to Schwab. Schwab is tentatively set up as the record keeper. Obviously, we can't do that till we get these documents in place. And then we'll have uploads of payroll files. First payroll wire will go over on the 21st of January. Hiring auditor, beginning purchase of service, subject to IRS approval, which we've got the filings going. And item 70, that'll happen hopefully in May 2023. There's a 1-year wait for people to buy service credit. And of course, the IRS makes you do tax filings when you do a transfer from one plan to the other. That's what the 5310 is about. Any questions for me on the documents or where we are or what we've been doing? Or
Questions of staff? Seeing no questions of staff, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further.
Just Dave Gruber, just real quick, I just wanted to thank Terry Velasquez for putting this together. This has been a huge effort. It's taken multiple years. Terry led the effort, and I want to thank her for that.
Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to moving item number 4A forward? Seeing no objection, item number 4A will move forward. We've already done item number 4B. We've done item number 5A. Item number 5B, prohibition of firearms in or upon the Aurora Municipal Center. Rachel Allen.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I'm happy to provide a brief summary of the law on both open carry of firearms and concealed carry of firearms and the prohibition in public facilities, and then turn it over to City Manager Twombly to talk through some of the policy questions and decisions. Or if you'd like City Manager Twombly to lead, and then I'll follow up, whatever the pleasure of council is, that's how we'll proceed.
Please proceed.
Okay. So back in 2003, City Council adopted an ordinance codified at Section 94-154 of the City Code. And in that, they prohibited the open carry of firearms in public facilities so long as those facilities are posted. Council also had the option at the time in 2003 to prohibit concealed carry weapons, but there were considerable more restrictions and more requirements in order to do that back in 2003. This past legislative session, the Colorado General Assembly changed the law with respect to local governments prohibiting concealed carry firearms in public facilities. So some of those requirements that are no longer in place that were in place in 2003. So in 2003, if the city wanted to prohibit concealed carry firearms, they had to have a magnometer or a metal detector at every door, along with security guards staffing that metal detector. That's no longer the case after the legislature amended the law this past session with Senate Bill 21-256. So if City Council would like to amend the code provision with respect to prohibiting open carry of firearms, it aligns also with the new law on concealed carry firearms. And so all the council would need to do is amend the ordinance to include not just prohibition of open carry of firearms, but also concealed carry weapons, and then post the facilities that they would like to do that in. You can select facilities, you can select a portion of facilities, or you can do all public facilities, just depending on how you post them. Any questions? If not, I'll turn it over to City Manager Twombly to talk through some of the policy implications and kind of facilitate a conversation on what you'd like to do with public facilities.
This, of course, is in response to discussion about the use of magnetometers. And so, Rachel, I guess I have a question for you before we proceed, and that's just that, is it that in order to use a magnetometer in the building or for council meetings, this ordinance would need to be approved?
In order to prohibit concealed carry weapons, this ordinance would have to be approved. Right now, if we post the city facilities, then we can go ahead and prohibit open carry. So the change would be to concealed carry. There's no longer a requirement that you have to use metal detectors and have security guards at every door if you do in fact prohibit concealed carry weapons. But there is the practical consideration that if we don't have metal detectors, how do we know if anyone's actually concealed carrying or not? How do we know if they're actually violating the prohibition, should council choose to enact that?
Okay, thank you. Well, and the idea of using a magnetometer for those entering council chambers is what I've heard from a number of council members that they would like to see in order to feel safer within the council chambers. And so I guess my question to the council is is there a consensus around that? And if so, it would seem that the proceeding to, consider this ordinance would be in order.
Questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Brosens.
Thank you. I guess when we were talking about it before, I didn't realize that there could not be a weapon of any kind going through the magnetometer. Now, it totally makes sense now, but at the time, I didn't think about it. If you had a concealed carry, don't you have like a license or something that you're supposed to keep with you at all times, so that if you wanted to carry, you could just show your little license and you would be allowed to go back in?
So the way that the state statute was amended this past session, it does not take into account concealed carry permit holders. And so even if you are authorized by permit to carry a concealed carry weapon, then you still would not be allowed to carry that into a public facility that A, prohibited concealed carry firearms, and B, posted either that public facility or a particular area within that facility. Is that responsive?
Well, that just brings up another point. Did the state legislature say that all cities need to do this to post so that there could be no weapons of any kind in any public building?
So what the legislature exactly said is officials of local governments are uniquely equipped to make determinations as to where concealed handguns can be carried in their local jurisdictions. So before it was a matter of mixed state and local concern. Now it's a matter, sorry, I got that wrong. Before it was a matter exclusively of state concern. Now it's a matter of mixed state and local concern. And so they've delegated a lot more authority to locals to make the decision that best suits their facilities and their community.
But if we wanted to, we could still say yes. I mean, this has come to council before. I don't know, it was several years ago, and we voted to go ahead and allowed not to change anything. But are we forced to change something now? No.
No, you're not required to make any decisions. I'm just walking through the options that are available to you based upon the state statute, because again, it did change this past session.
Okay, and Mayor, could I ask Jim something while I have the floor?
Please.
Thank you. Jim, and I'll go back to when we were talking. I don't know what you heard from me, but I would like to say that I would prefer to have maybe an extra officer or two instead of the magnetometer, because those officers know who is coming, who are the regulars. You know, they know them. They know them by name, and they know who is out of place there. So I would rather depend on people who know our attendees rather than go to the expense and changing our rules for all this equipment.
Discussion.
Okay.
Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to moving item number 5B forward?
Gardner.
Marcano.
Persons.
Coombs.
Murillo.
Lawson.
I have Burzins, Coombs, Murillo, Lawson, Marcano.
And Hills.
Gardner.
Okay, seeing a majority have risen in opposition, item number 5B will not move forward. Item number 7A, 2021 Arts District Stakeholders Update. Philip Nashbar.
Good evening, Council. I'm having a hard time getting video. Good evening. So this is a presentation by the Arts District Stakeholder Group. This is their annual presentation, although they haven't given a presentation in a few years because of COVID. And this is an opportunity for them to kind of give you an update as to what some of their challenges are and what's happening in the district as well. So the Arts District are a group of 15 arts organizations and artists. They've been meeting informally since 2015. They produced a strategic plan in 2016, and they've been using that as a guide for themselves to focus on how to improve the district, how to improve their effectiveness and organizational capacity. And of course, staff has worked pretty closely with them. The boundaries of the district are roughly coterminous with the Fletcher Plaza Urban Renewal Area. And I mention that because the goals of the Urban Renewal Plan are focused around the establishment of an arts district and have been historically for quite some time, as far as back as 1980, when there was a Colfax master plan on this in this area. So that's the primary goal of both the urban renewal plan and the district. The plan acknowledges that the area is the most ethnically diverse and historic area of the city. Multicultural programming continues to be an important objective for the district. So this presentation will provide you with an overview of how the stakeholders are working to achieve their goals, some of the challenges posed by the pandemic, and also how they've worked creatively to reach their audience. So let me see if I can pull that up.
While Phil does that, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Craig Bond, and I am the creative force behind Vintage Theater, and I have been in the district for 10 years. And I know several of you, and just wanted to say thank you. Thank you all for all of your hard work with supporting the district and being part of this process. For close to a decade, I know that it takes a lot of people to make all of our ships rise together. So Phil's looking at our map of what the district actually, the boundaries are, and you can see the various numbers associated with the location of the facilities within the district. And he's going to go to the next slide. You can see at the bottom, though, all the logos that were there. And with this arts district, you know, we know kind of where it's at, but who's in it? Who's involved with this amazing stakeholders groups? And here's the list of all of the organizations currently involved. 10 years ago, we started with 3 or 4 players with DAVA, the Aurora Fox, Inside the Orchestra, Red Delicious Press, and Vintage Theater. And all these organizations were part of this call tonight. They've all been here to really support. Again, Phil had mentioned that we meet every couple of weeks, at least once a month. And we just really kind of strive together to make all ships rise together. And we'll go to our next slide. And I wanted to do a special shout out before we get to our strategic plan and really thank City Council as well as the Planning and Development Office, specifically Andrea Almonic, for her years of service to help our organizations strive to come together and really grow. And the theme of where we came from was really about how can we help each other as we grow our organizations, and that kind of threaded into our strategic plan. And many, many organizations have moved into the district over the years, but a lot of the older organizations have found that they need to take the smaller culturals under their wing to help them grow and survive through the district. And with that, key strategic points came out with our strategic plan that we had developed for the last 5 years, of which you can see we wanted to build the capacity of the organizations. We really wanted to put audience out there, and Carrie's going to be looking at our numbers here in a little bit to show you where we've come in the last decade or so. And I just want to say that you have really invested in us over the past decade, and we're about to show you where all of our revenues are and where all of our audience is, and everything we're doing to strengthen the citizens of Aurora coming to our events and supporting your efforts. So thank you again. Carrie?
Hi, next slide, please. Hi, my name is Carrie Drum. I'm a arts and creative consultant that has been working with the groups in the district and the city to kind of do a bunch of different things, but in particular, strengthen this organizational and financial capacity. Phil, can you go to the next slide? So as we know, as you all probably know, the arts sector has been particularly hard hit by COVID, with closures, not being able to perform, and a reduction in revenue. But I just wanted to put this slide up here to show you that in 2020, the arts districts actually came out pretty strong and didn't see a major dip in revenue. Partially that was because of the support of the city, but then also because the organizations in the district have such strong supporters that they were able to solicit donations. They were really able to apply for COVID response grants. So you'll see, despite the fact that, you know, buildings were closed for the majority of 2020, the arts organizations were able to continue to earn revenue and stay strong. Next slide, please, Phil. And here's just another slide kind of indicating the attendance pre-COVID and in 2020 and where we are now in 2021. You'll also see that numbers have remained relatively steady in 2020. Part of the reason for that was that organizations were able to shift pretty rapidly to providing streaming online services, and they did an excellent job of that. Some organizations, you know, really responded quickly and were able to have folks in the door serving them as soon as possible. So that just goes to show that the arts organizations were able to remain both fiscally but also programmatically sound during what was a pretty tough time locally as well as nationally for arts organizations. Next slide, please. As far as some of the things that we've seen the arts groups do over the past 3 to 4 years, we've provided all different kinds of support, from one-to-one counseling to group education in partnership with a SBDC. We've worked on governance, issues of board development, strategy and planning. So in addition to the strategic plan that you're seeing for the stakeholders, a lot of the individual arts groups have developed their own strategic plans and are working to grow and expand their services. Also support with finance, you know, creating great budgets, and particularly support for fundraising and fund development, grants, campaigns, planning, etc. Next slide, please, Phil. We wanted to say just a quick mention about SCFD funding. So we're proud that all of the groups in the district that are eligible for SCFD funding receive SCFD funding, which has really helped to weather the storm in COVID, but in general also just to grow the organizations and provide some stability. That's particularly from both Arapahoe and Adams County SCFD funding. And you'll see for the bigger organizations that do receive SCFD funding, you know, they've really seen growth in revenue, in numbers served, and in days open to the public, which are the indicators that SCFD uses to distribute funds. We're also helping smaller organizations become SCFD ready, so that when they reach the 5-year mark, they have all their finances and other materials in line, so they can then take advantage of that great funding that we have here in the metro area. Next slide, please. And just a final note, you know, the city provides a grant, the Northwest Aurora Arts Fund, to support development in that area. And here's a list of the organizations that were funded in 2020, I believe, for the 2021 program year. And you can see that that's kind of across the board, members of these stakeholder groups that have then used that funding to reinvest in their organization to continue to grow. I think I'm going to pass it on over now to Aaron. Next slide, Phil. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Aaron Vega. I'm the curator for the People's Building, which is a City of Aurora venue. I think I've seen just about everybody there at some point, some event or performance. So thank you for that. It's always a pleasure to have council coming to these events, so we get to share all of the fun stuff we do. Briefly, for those of you that may not know, the People's Building is a 1920s furniture store that was retrofitted to become a multi-use art space with the goal of providing access to affordable event performance space. And our secondary goal is to drive traffic to the neighborhood and introduce new artists and their guests to the shops and restaurants along Colfax East. And we've been able to accomplish this through a mix of rental partners, everywhere from Italy to Boulder and Lyons and Fort Collins and right in Colfax East, to And we've also been using our new HD multi-camera live streaming capability that we instituted during COVID. We pivoted quick, just like everybody else. And our Colfax-facing gallery that features new Colorado artists every month. The exhibit that's in there right now is amazing. We found it through the Mexican Cultural Center, Arturo Garcia. If you get a chance, come by on First Fridays and check out those. And all of our gallery displays and First Friday concerts since November are available in virtual form on our website, thepeoplesbuilding.com. Excuse me. And on this slide alone that you're looking at, you can see the scope of our programming. You've got the International Korean Unification presentation. Those are people in traditional Korean dress backstage. That's not our performing area. They're all backstage. And that program was actually streamed worldwide from the People's Building, which was pretty amazing, as well as our Day of Jubilee live streams, which has grown to include cross-streaming partners across the arts and business spectrum. So groups like Visit Aurora, Lady Justice Brewing, Jubilee Roasting Company, ACAD, Art in Public Places, Miet at Chocolate, they all cross-stream or cross-post all of those concerts to really help give unification to the neighborhood. And we're working together, like Craig had mentioned, that rising tide lifts all ships. We're creating a high level of performance events across the spectrum. So the People's Building, Vintage, 5280 Arts, the Fox Theater, we're all dedicated to building a culture of high quality entertainment on Colfax East through diverse programming, collaborations, reaching out to new groups. And the proof of concept is that we've seen a flurry of collaborative events like Colfax Campus Mural Festival, where ACAD and AIPP were able to engage directly with the neighborhood, to our latest Fall Festival and other activities on Fletcher Plaza, where we activated the Martin Luther King Jr. Library, which was fantastic for their folks. And the People's Building is almost fully booked for every weekend in 2022. And that's after a year of helping groups like ACAD and bands and indie groups get their program online. So you can really start to see the momentum building, and we want to see that momentum keep going. And this shows that there's actually incredible opportunity for our district as we create an attractive area for independent performers and visual artists. So, and a quick note is that the neighborhood's built-in diversity. I'm sure most of you know it is I think the most diverse neighborhood, or that area is the most diverse area in Aurora, one of the most diverse areas in the state and the country. And that built-in diversity and the city's celebration of that diversity has been a real draw to outside groups looking to reach new and emerging audiences. And finally, the arts allow a chance for folks to congregate around shared goals and ideals. So it's a heartening sign that all of our venues have been able to foster community through outreach efforts. So COVID research, vaccine sites, community-led cleanups, business meetings, collaborations, and a lot more. So thank you again, and looking forward to another great year. Next slide, please.
Okay. Has anyone found Krista?
Yes, here I am.
Okay, Krista, go right ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Krista Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Aurora Visual Arts. And DAVA has 28 years of mission-based experience strengthening the community through the arts. We're proud to be part of a district with organizations equally committed to our goal of community building. So how are we accomplishing this? We start by providing high-quality arts and culture programming that increases access. Especially in this very multicultural neighborhood, the arts provide a universal language to express our emotions, tell our stories through painting or music or dance. And people who participate in the arts are gaining new opportunities to connect, learn, communicate, and build skills. Another core value for all of us as ACAD organizations is inclusion. In this district, we celebrate and embrace diversity in all of its forms. So we create welcoming, inclusive arts experiences that strengthen participants' sense of identity and their feeling of belonging to the community. All of our organizations are also approaching our work through an equity lens. So we know that the arts are powerful. They're an engaging platform, not only to address social justice issues in our community, but to actually generate creative solutions for change. And finally, all of this together really leads to action. ACAD organizations often drive innovative collaborations across sectors, from the city government to education, local businesses, and new initiatives that are giving back to the community. So as residents continue to engage in these projects, their sustained involvement in the arts builds personal agency, and it really motivates a new generation of creative leaders. Thank you.
Next slide. So with this collaboration, really what Council asked us to do a few years ago is he said, really show us your numbers, show us your worth, show us the value of what you're bringing into the district. And we really have overall. And then they were like, grow your funding more so that you can stabilize. And we've done that. And last was like, be inclusive. And the most inclusive way that we have really shown ourselves to be is with all of our collaborations. With Vintage with Roshni is a collaboration, with DAVA, with the public schools. The Arts Pass is about to roll out, which is for all of the citizens of Aurora to have free or reduced tickets or experiences at all of our venues. And this is something that we're really very mindful of. I want you to hear this directly, that we have really strived to make sure that if the area is gentrifying, that we're still able to give all the artists of color the experience, the ability to come into our venues and to not only experience art, but also perhaps for the first time, but also to be able to invoke a safe place for them to actually hone the craft themselves beyond the last few collaborations you see with Red Delicious Press and People's Building. So just hear that we're very, very mindful of that, of the citizens of this district. Next slide.
Yeah, and in response to this creative response that our arts and arts groups have undertaken in response to the challenging times of, during the pandemic, the city is working on projects as well to support their goals and the goals of the city. Some of them, and you may have heard of a few of these, are the Colfax Streetscape Project, which is a project we've been working on for a number of years and will be going out to bid, I think, within the next 2 to 4 weeks. And this is a project to actually clean up the sidewalks, improve the streetscape where pedestrians are from Dayton to Florence Street, this is the core area of the district. Much of the district infrastructure, sidewalks, lighting, the landscape has been degraded over the years, and we want to bring that back to kind of signify a rejuvenation of the district. Secondly, and as part of that, we're also improving specific areas within the district. One in particular is around the Fox Arts Center, in which we're adding a small plaza, or we're retrofitting an existing extended terms of the goals of the district. One of the critiques of the district has been that we have not been able to show a physical identity. You can drive right through Colfax and never know that there was an arts district there. But I think with these improvements, these physical improvements, you will start to notice, and we will try to achieve that goal of creating a physical identity. Also, one of the key projects, let me go to the next one, is the activation of Fletcher Plaza. For this project, the city, we worked internally and with external groups as well over about 3 months to put together a grant application for activation of the plaza, which really consists of infrastructure to create placemaking in that area to hold events and commercial activity. And we were successful this year in getting a $150,000 grant, which was awarded about a month ago. And now we're in the stages of planning for executing that. Most of the events will take place during the warm summer months, or the warm months of the year, spring to fall of 2022. But what you see here is, on the left, Fletcher Plaza as it is now, and on the right, you see what a sort of conceptual plaza could look like once we are able to, place physical infrastructure to create a more attractive and welcoming environment. And then the last project I just want to quickly mention is we are also renovating the 1400 Dallas facility, which is an arts facility the city has managed for a number of years. That project is also actually starting here in the next, I think, a week or two. We will actually be under contract to renovate that facility. The goal of that project is to improve the kind of space that we're providing for emerging artists. And that is anticipated to be completed first 1 or 2 weeks in January. And the idea there is that the quality of that space will be upgraded. There'll be more communal working space, and there'll be a better separation of uses so that a lot of things can go on at the same time. So we're looking forward to that as ways in which the city can support this overall effort. I'm turning it over to Stephanie Hancock and Bliss Coleman, who will give you kind of a overview of the next 5 years.
Hi, my name is Bliss Coleman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Aurora Cultural Arts District. I'm excited to report that the Aurora Cultural Arts District was recommended for the Creative District Certification Site Visit. Colorado Creative Industries works to expand Colorado's creative industries' economic growth, focusing on strengthening the vitality of visual and performing and literary arts through promotion, resources, and funding opportunities. That site visit is actually scheduled for November 5th from 1 to 4. That means that we should know very soon if we have been awarded the CCI district certification. We feel confident that we have met the benchmarks to secure this designation, and we would like to formally invite you all to come out in support of these efforts. Without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Stephanie Hancock, our board president and chief visionary officer of the Aurora Cultural Arts District. Stephanie? Unmute yourself, Stephanie.
I'm unmuted. I'm not sure. I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. We can see you too.
Yeah? Okay. Here once more with feeling. So I'm Stephanie Hancock. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer of 5280 Artists Co-op. We were born in the Aurora Cultural Arts District, and we've been in this district for 5 years. We're the only veteran women-run African-American theater company in the entire state. So we're very proud of that. And we're very proud of the fact that the district has given us an opportunity to thrive and grow. Now, you've heard a lot about what the district is doing this evening, but we want to continue to make improvements. We're always striving to move forward. And here's some major approaches that can collectively help us all together push forward to work better and to work farther. And those include, as was said before, the many different cultures in the district that call it home, including immigrants from all over the world. Are we making sure that we're engaging these groups? If we're not, what do we need to do? How do we need to engage them? We understand that culturally there are differences, so we need to meet them where they are and invite them to participate in what we're doing. There's an opportunity for each individual organization in the district, as well as collectively, for us to place our focus and energy on how to bring these folks in. There's a rich tapestry of people in the district that share food, art, culture, creativity that could be the envy of the state, dare I say the entire world, because of what we have here. It's a great opportunity for the city of Aurora to add its support to reach these groups. So we continue to work to improve the reputation of the district. Yeah, we're grimy. Yeah, we're a scrappy group, but we're a diamond in the rough. And we're fighting gentrification in a way that it would just wash us and make us not unique or distinctive. We want to keep the distinctiveness of what makes Colfax, from Dallas to Dayton to Florence to 17th, to keep it what it is beautiful and culturally relevant and just amazing. Some things that have been discussed this evening, like improved lighting and walkability and wayfinding and all those things, that will help us be better as a district to make us more identifiable. So when people drive through, they know where they're at. It goes further. We need increased investment and partnership from the city that has sometimes kind of forgot us sometimes. We would like to continue exploring how to strengthen this partnership so that it can be mutually beneficial for all of us. Back to the ships rising. We all rise together when we all support each other. And communication and on-time funding, one-time funding, project funding, that helps us. We're raising our own money, but it's great to have a little bit more money helping us to reach our goals. And the cachet of getting the Colorado Creative District Industry Certification, that will kick us over the roof. And we're really excited about that. Studio One at 1400 Dallas Street, while we were hoping, because it's been the home of 5280 Artists Co-op since its inception, we were hoping to start back in that building this month. Sadly, we won't be able to do that. And that's one of the challenges that our groups face, is that we don't have enough performance and rehearsal space in the district. I see a lot of vacant spaces up and down the street. It would be great to experience and to discover, hey, can we use some of these spaces to help us to have pop-up galleries, rehearsal spaces, and even performance spaces? We know that the Aurora Cultural Arts District is an incredible asset to the city of Aurora, but we need stronger partnerships across the district and across the city government. Finally, we look forward to bringing our unique touch to other areas of Aurora. Outside of our district, everybody needs to know how awesome and great we are and how much we have to offer. We look forward to cross collaboration across this great city of Aurora so that we can do even greater things. So with that said, we just need the proper investments, support, and just a little rah, rah, rah every once in a while to let us know we're doing good. So if there's any questions that the council has for us at this time, we're ready to receive them. Thank you so much again for your time and attention.
Are there any questions?
Mayor?
Councilmember Combs.
So I'm glad to hear the goal of really engaging folks that maybe haven't been engaged. I think that's always incredibly important. And I do wonder specifically how you might be able to work together with our youth violence prevention team and other partners that are really working with youth in our city who we know are struggling with mental health issues, with gang involvement, and with other, just risks to them within the community.
I can speak to some of that.
I can also.
Just really quickly, I think it's always about that first conversation. So if they reach out, so for example, there was a group, Insight Collab, which was formerly Theater Esprit Asia, which came to me with a group called Asian Girls Ignite, where they really wanted to empower Asian girls as writers, as artists, and to start taking their feelings, and they would write them down. They had a whole session in our conference room where they would write these things down, and then they worked with a theater teacher upstairs in our space to actually put movement to them. I could see programs like that happening a lot in the different areas, right? As we're sort of plugging in venues or plugging in performances into the venues. But a lot of us are understaffed. There's one or maybe three of us for the larger organizations. So sometimes it's hard for us to reach out to them. But if you hear of groups that are looking for space and want to collaborate, that's the biggest thing. Please send them our way. I can't imagine that any of us wouldn't chat with folks about ways that we could collaborate.
And to that end, I mean, art reaches places where other things don't. And the commonality that we have is that when people are able to express themselves in an artistic way, a lot of the internal things that are at the root cause of their issues come forward. I think of a group called Black Girls Rock, and they do a lot of this type of stuff. We're empowered to help create art. We're not mental health counselors. This is where we try to collaborate cross-culturally with other groups that are specialized in that area. And so, like to Aaron's point, we look forward to being able to collaborate because art reaches deep places where other things don't. And so for us, we like the opportunity to be able to do that, but we want to partner with experts to make that happen.
Further questions?
Mayor, not a question, a couple comments though.
Councilmember Maria.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I'm excited to hear of all of the energy and movement in the district. I think I love the vision and kind of the plans moving forward. I hope to be at that potential designation meeting as well, so I can lend my support to that process. I know that's been a long time coming. Like, this is not the first time. So hopefully we can kind of get us over that threshold. I do think, though, the devil's in the details, though. Like, I want to see this plan be beautifully executed and make sure that we are still reserving spaces. I still get contacted, like, as a minor example, I still get contacted by some of the businesses that were at the ACAD building before renovation, right? And they're like lasting pain points in that transition. And I know we've talked about this and I've talked with staff, but it is those really like seemingly minor things that is like rocks these small organizations like to in not a necessarily a positive way. So where we can be supportive and I guess easing those transitions. I agree. I hear a lot about affordable spaces. I know that part of our housing strategy is strategic land acquisition. I'd love for that to be part of an economic development strategy, small area planning in that in the district, because you know, as much as we've worked to build that critical mass, I know it's still not enough. So I just wanted to offer those comments because I do think there's a lot of I guess synchronicities between what we could do to maybe even advance housing and kind of the business space in the district as well. So thanks for your presentation and thanks for your and continued enthusiasm and excitement. It was very refreshing to see. Thank you.
No further questions, comments? Seeing none, this presentation was for information only. I want to thank all the presenters for it and really would encourage members of council and the public to attend as many of their events as possible. I know I frequent DAVA and the Fox Arts Theater. Thanks so much, everybody. With that, there's no further business before council, and this meeting is adjourned.
Have a good night, y'all.